The new police reform bill is a load of crap. Hey guys, this is Double D from the Entitled Millennials podcast, and this is my Thinking Out Loud series. So several weeks ago, House Democrats came out with a new sweeping legislative reform of police departments and police brutality. Democrats showed up with a lot of ceremony. Nancy Pelosi is our number one theater girl, as you know. They came out in full-blown regalia with kente cloth to supposedly mourn the death of George Floyd, to show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter protests. They put on a big ceremony to show that they are finally willing to take on police brutality and reform our police departments. Obviously, this news is a few weeks old, but I've finally had some time with everything going on in my life to go through and kind of pick apart what they're proposing in this bill, what sort of legislative reforms we are going to see, and what we're not going to see. Now, the Democrats are obviously pitching this as big, as I said, sweeping reform that's going to change everything. Well, that's not exactly the case. Diving into the bill a little bit, I've noticed that there is little to no actual legislative teeth to do anything to reform against the sort of actions that we've seen that killed George Floyd, that have killed other African Americans, and that have allowed the sort of violence to occur against the Black Lives Matter protests. The biggest figurehead in the bill is that it lowers the standard upon which police can be prosecuted if there's a claim that they have been in civil liberties or civil rights violations. As it is now, police officers have to have willfully overstepped civil rights and civil liberties in order to be prosecuted in a court of law. The new wording in the bill is that actions taken with reckless disregard can now be prosecuted in a court of law. So what does that mean? And this is my first real qualm with this bill. What does it mean to have taken actions which are in reckless disregard of a person's civil liberties? It doesn't mean anything. There's no actual legislative teeth here. This is a very elastic clause in the bill. You could take this in any one direction. You could spin it in a court of law if they were prosecuted, or in the case of doing a prior investigation, you could say that, oh, it wasn't reckless, it was called for because of the scenario. The officer could even just plead, oh, I was afraid for my life, and so I did this. There's any number of ways that a police officer, a police officer's attorney, or the police union could spin a given scenario, like in the case of George Floyd. Maybe they wouldn't get off so easily because that was just so blatant, 8 to 9 minutes. But there's many scenarios where somebody's shot in the back, or this, that, and the other thing, where it could be painted off as, oh, he didn't willingly do this. He was pushed to the limit and was forced to do it. So as I said, that's my first real qualm with this bill. What does that mean? What does it mean to have willfully done it? What does it mean to have reckless disregard in a scenario? Again, you could spin this any way, shape, and form in order to take the police officer's side. The next big tenet in the bill is they are going to unveil a national registry to bookmark or to file all the claims against every individual police officer, be it police brutality, be it overstepping of rights, be it a warrantless search, whatever it may be. This is the second biggest, baddest thing that they're doing in their sweeping legislative reform, is we're going to create a national registry to keep track of our disobedient or strong-armed police officers. My question for the viewers or anyone that's been following this new Democratic police reform bill is, what is a national registry, what is a national database going to do to fix police brutality? I mean, isn't there already state and local registries? If there's a court case against a police officer, can't attorneys, district attorneys, or whoever's handling the case, can't they go into the state and local registries in order to find information against a police officer? Why do we need a national database? I mean, not saying it's a bad thing, but they're painting it like it's this huge achievement. It's going to make this huge difference in the lives of Black and brown Americans, and I don't really think that it's going to help at all. Like I said, this information taken against police officers is already available at the state and local level. To go hand in hand with this registry, they're forming a new National Police Oversight Committee. So my first qualm with this is, how many fucking committees do we already have in Congress and in state legislators and local governments and blah, blah, blah? How many committees do we already have? And what kind of track record do these committees have of dealing with the injustices and legislative flaws that are already facing our country? What is a National Oversight Committee especially if it gets populated by neoliberal shitheads that are bootlicking police lovers, what is that going to do to stop police beating African Americans to death over petty crimes? The answer, as I'm sure you know, is absolutely nothing. Coming up next is a mandated body camera initiative. That means that all police officers in the United States of America, if this legislation gets pushed through, which even though it has nothing in it, it's still probably not going to go through. Now police officers will have to wear a body camera. And now I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing. We have seen instances where if a police officer finally does get brought to court, the body camera footage is very useful. It can show that the police was indeed stepping out of line, planted evidence, did this, that, and the other thing. But at the same time, most police departments already use body cameras. That's already a municipal or state mandate. So again, this national mandate and this sweeping legislative reform of police departments is just business as usual. It's the same old shit we've already seen. And on top of that, going with the body cameras, there's no piece of legislation, there's no line in this legislation saying that if a police officer, shuts off their body camera or tapes it over, that they're going to face any sort of legal repercussions for it. So really, what's the point of having a body camera, or what good does the body camera do if the police officer can just shut it off without, with impunity? Next, we have a ban on chokeholds. And I haven't looked into this as much, but my first instinct tells me that maybe that is a good thing, but if police officers still have qualified immunity, if we can take a stance that this wasn't recklessly endangering a person's life or civil liberties, it seems to me that in most court cases, a police officer is probably going to get off with at most a slap in the wrist for using a chokehold. And finally, to round things off, the new bill suggests that police departments all around the country should have new anti-discrimination and anti-profiling training, which is something I'm pretty sure most police departments already have to have as a legal requirement mandated by their city governments or their state governments. So what are we looking at here, guys? We're looking at Nancy Pelosi and other House Democrats coming out, putting on a big show, wearing a kente cloth, Black Lives Matter, let's kneel for 9 minutes. Oh, looks so damn good, and the bill sounds really great. Oh, we're finally getting some change. And then you get into it, and it's a load of horse shit. And this brings me on to another subject, something that's very important when it comes to politics, when it comes to voting blue no matter who. This sort of cheap-ass symbolic legislation is the sort of thing that they're going to do under Biden or under establishment Democrats to placate the progressive movement. They're going to put out bills that have a big name, that sound really hopeful, like the Right to Work Act in some states. And in the meantime, it actually has no teeth to it at all, or in fact, despite the pretty name, it ends up going counterintuitive, going completely against the interests of working people, minorities, or whatever have you. This Democratic piece of legislation has no teeth to it all. It has no perspective on trying to defund or dismantle police or rebuild them from the ground up. It doesn't end the gross militarization we've seen in the last several years. It doesn't end the use of rubber bullets or tear gas. Qualified immunity is still going to be a thing. And for those of you who are wondering, qualified immunity essentially gives government officials and law enforcement officers immunity in a court of law for constitutional violations. So of course, with this bill having no teeth, with it having no bite to it, qualified immunity is still going to be a thing. The training in most police departments, and obviously this is going to vary state to state, city to city, is still going to be incredibly poor, especially when compared to the training that goes on in other European nations and in other developed nations around the world. There's no hint in this piece of legislation that there's going to be a community policing program. It's going to be more of the same instances where people that live outside of a community are coming in, that have no ties to the community, coming in and doing the policing, no ties to the individuals, and no real qualms if it ends up being a brutal situation. As far as I've read, there's no mental health criteria. There isn't going to be regular checkups for police officers outside of what a municipal police department already mandates. And this bill does absolutely nothing to rein in the power of police unions. So as you can see, guys, despite all the big ceremony and Nancy Pelosi, our number one theater girl, coming out in her kente cloth and kneeling and putting on this big show, what we're ending up with is a police reform bill that reforms the police right back into the status quo. But we're hoping that the name of the bill and the big ceremony that we put on for you guys is going to make you feel better about your black and brown brothers and sisters being murdered by police. And I don't know how you guys feel. I'm thinking out loud. As you know, that's the name of the show. But I am so sick and tired of this symbolic change shit. I am so sick and tired of them spoon feeding us horse shit every single day over every single issue. We're getting Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben off the packages. We got a Golden Girls episode removed from, I mean, that show was on 20 fucking years ago. That's great. People aren't going to be calling the master bedroom anymore. That's pretty cool. And of course, we're getting a lot of statues taken down. That's, you know, I like that actually, but that has nothing to do with Democrats. And then, of course, as you guys know, it seems like all the bureaus and the military are going to ban the Confederate flag. So, guys, we're getting some real fucking change here, and it feels good, man. No, but seriously, what a load of shit. Don't fall for it. Don't listen to their pandering. They're trying to get you to, you know, put down your masks and go back inside and stop getting out in the streets. And like I said, guys, don't fucking fall for it. For those of you guys that are still out there doing the BLM thing, solidarity from the Entitled Millennials studio, keep fucking fighting. You know, some states we're seeing some actual real change. Minneapolis is completely disbanding their police department and building it from the ground up. I've heard some great things coming out of Colorado, like they're getting rid of qualified immunity, and they have a whole host of other changes they're going through. So don't listen to this pandering ass bullshit. You know, don't put down your fucking Molotov cocktails and Black Panthers. Don't put your rifles down. Like, get out there still. Stay in solidarity. Keep fighting. Keep donating to the Black Lives Matter protests. Keep listening to videos like this. Stay informed. And just know that if you keep fighting, we're going to see some real fucking systemic change. Because every day there's people out there clogging the streets, putting up a fight. That's money coming out of their fucking pockets. And if there's one thing this system can't stand, is money coming out of their pockets. So with that, guys, again, solidarity from the Entitled Millennials studio. I should have this video, guys, up for you soon. And another episode of the Entitled Millennials podcast coming at you sometime this week. All right, guys, take it easy. Bye.